Hi everyone. Forgive me, I'm not as glowy and radiant as I normally am on camera, but I hope you guys are good. How are my fellow TIs doing? I hope you guys are doing well. Um, Everything's a bit up in the air at the moment because I'm getting ready to travel on the 31st. I'm going to be traveling for I think 5 days, if not a week. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how things go. I'm going to be going to Devon for the second, and as soon as I get back, you guys are gonna I'm going to let you guys know exactly why I've gone to Devon and exactly what I'm there to do and how that will affect the content that I create both on my Fabian Deacon YouTube channels and my Imps Justice Tarot channel, because given the information that I've gotten so far, there are going to be some changes made to how I run my overall affairs. There are going to be some changes to the content that I create as well, based on what happens during this trip. That's how important it is. I'm not going to go into complete detail, but yeah, that's how important this trip is, because after this trip, a lot of things are going to change. Um, I'm kind of out of sorts at the moment. I've just been spending the last couple of days relaxing since my birthday. I've kind of been worn out a little bit, and I've been napping on and off. So it's like sleeping patterns out of whack. So I'm just allowing I'm just allowing my body to rest and do what it needs to do so that it can find the energy to travel. Also, what was I going to say? Yeah. The weirdest thing brought me to the subject of today's video, right? So for today's video, I was just absentmindedly watching a theory video on YouTube about, and just like that. And it was about the possibility of Carrie Bradshaw, the main protagonist for Sex and the City, and just like that, having dementia based upon all the characteristics we've seen of her so far. And one thing that particularly interested me was auditory hallucinations. Now, what I learned about auditory hallucinations, because at first I was like, given what I know about directed energy weapons and given what I know about long-range acoustic devices, I'm thinking, even if you don't get long-range acoustic devices sending directed audio to you in order to fake auditory hallucinations, they can still be recreated by damaging some part of the brain. So that was what my brain put together. It's like everything that I watch, everything that I consume, like it always comes back to Gangstalking. I always find a way to kind of incorporate that into Havana Syndrome. And the thing is that auditory hallucinations, as it turns out, is easily synthesized as well, because we've gone through all the symptoms of dementia on that video that I mentioned with Carrie having dementia. All those things can be easily synthesized, or it can be arranged to make it look like the person has dementia even when they don't have dementia, which is really, really worrying. But coming back to the auditory hallucinations, it's located on the superior temporal gyrus in the temporal lobe. So it's in this part of the brain. It's on the side. You see that? That's where your the primary auditory cortex is. And reduced brain matter in that area can cause auditory hallucinations. So DEWs, which is called active denial systems, they can easily be fired into that part of the brain, very, very easily. As long as EMF, electromagnetic frequencies, they can be fired into that part of the brain to recreate auditory hallucinations. Sorry. They can be they can be fired at that part of the brain. The active denial systems and the EMFs can be fired at that part of the brain to create auditory hallucinations. And knowing that is really, really worrying. So it just really goes to show how much of the mental illness that we're familiar with, that we have diagnoses for, how much of it is organic and how much of it is actually caused by trauma. And not only just by trauma, but by trauma inflicted by electronic warfare. So as it stands, even hallucinations, which can very well happen. I mean, hallucinations have happened before electronic technology came about. There was always hallucinations. But the most important thing to realize about hallucinations is that it's caused by trauma to the brain, which can either be affected by chemical imbalances in the body or direct trauma. So you can't even trust, like, diagnoses of mental illnesses now, because those diagnoses are just names given for certain symptoms that can be synthesized through torture and through trauma. So even hallucinations, including auditory hallucinations, now it just demonstrates to me that even the argument of, oh, this person's hallucinating, that can't actually be used to disprove gang stalking, because somebody can be hallucinating and be a targeted individual. In fact, if a lot of people are hallucinating, if quite a few people are hallucinating, it's very likely that it could be down to non-ionized radiation and electromagnetic torture. So even hallucinations now can't be trusted. You can say, oh, they're hallucinating, auditory hallucinate. Okay, but what is your proof? What is your evidence that gang stalking isn't real? Because hallucinations can easily be caused by trauma. And if it's not direct trauma to the brain, then it's trauma inflicted through chemical imbalance. How is trauma inflicted through chemical imbalance? Stress. So what are the factors of stress that are causing people to be mentally ill long term? You see, people are going over systemic long-term problems with sticky plaster so that a very few people in society can continue to spend limitless money on bullshit trying to control people. Nobody's actually looking at, it's nobody's actually looking at the issue. Every single time targeted individuals try to say that their mental illnesses are synthesized, that the diagnoses are faked, every time people say you're hallucinating, you're delusional, you keep pointing back to the issue. People who are, derogatory towards mentally ill people, they call that person crazy and stuff like that. But, you have to have mental illness as a result of trauma. You keep pointing back to the issue. And with gang stalking, it's the same thing. With electronic weapons, it's the same thing. With fucking non-ionized radiation, it's the same thing. You keep pointing back to the issue. And you do it without realizing it. So for me, looking at this, like just looking at this online, like just learning more about the brain and how it works, it makes me realize that, once again, like I've said a million times during this video, hallucination is not proof that gang stalking isn't real. It's not evidence. Somebody being mentally ill, even mentally ill to the point where they can't look after themselves, that's not actual proof that their targeting isn't real. The only thing it means is that their own testimony cannot be relied upon because they are in the grip of mental illness. But their mental illness itself, it doesn't actually prove that nothing's actually happening to them. I've said that before. And the more I look into how the brain works and, which parts of the brain can be caused trauma, the more I look into this, is the more I realize that, mental illness is just not a reason to disprove gang stalking. And the more that I look into this, the more that I realize how serious and widespread this shit is. Because people are walking around accusing other people of dangerous mental illness, making life or death decisions not even based on CT scans or MRI scans, but based on the word of over 20 people who can easily lie, given how well they're paid. You know, mental illness is dictated by how many reports mental health gets. And the mental health themselves, they don't do any brain scans. They don't do CT scans or MRI scans, like I said before, to ascertain what parts of the brain are damaged and thus what mental illness the person is likely to have. And it could be very, very easily done. And they know it. But they refuse to do it. They refuse to get actual evidence, and they rely upon hearsay in order to make their judgments. And they rely upon mental illnesses themselves to disprove that the mental illnesses were caused by something. But mental illnesses don't come out of fresh air. They have to come from somewhere. And that somewhere is always trauma. Now I'm starting to think about that one person that I lived with that had a split in the brain. Now, she used to get on my fucking nerves, right? But when I really think about that poor soul, when I really think about that poor woman, right? How she literally had a split in the brain. Literally had a split in the brain and was fobbed off by literally every single person in the medical profession saying, oh, if you talk to someone, that's what heals the split in the brain. The only thing that heals a split in the brain is surgery. So how the fuck did she get the split? Now I got questions. How the fuck did that woman get the split? There is no way in hell you got a whole split in your brain and talking to a therapist is just going to magically heal it over. I've never heard of such a thing. And this was in psychiatry. These were psychiatric experts that told this poor woman this. Imagine being that fucking evil. Imagine being that fucking evil. There is no way in hell. How did she get that fucking split? How did that even happen to her? You got a split in the brain, that's trauma. How did she get the trauma to the brain for it to split? And you want to turn around and tell me that talking gets rid of... No. No, they're experimenting on her. There's no way. There is no way. There is no way. This is exactly what I'm talking about. And this is why I say people can call you mad all they like, and they will. If you are a targeted individual, they will call you crazy. They will call you paranoid schizophrenic. They will pull whatever mental health diagnoses out of their ass in a bid to try and say that gangstalking isn't real. But I'm here to tell you that if you are a targeted individual and you are paranoid schizophrenic, your paranoid schizophrenia does not disprove your targeting. It does nothing to disprove your targeting. Not a goddamn thing. The only thing that disproves your targeting is lack of evidence that there's targeting. And if there are traumas in your life serious enough for you to have mental, if your traumas are serious enough for there to be mental illnesses, then trust and believe something caused them mental illnesses. There is no way they came up out of thin air. That means the sources of the trauma have to be investigated. And the person with the mental illness has to be removed from the source of the trauma, not just doped up with pills. But then again, we're living in a society that relies upon profit. All this drug running, all these diagnoses, they serve a purpose to ensure the profit of pharmaceutical companies and defense systems. You're talking about mental hygiene and fucking experimenting on people with weaponry in order to assure their effectiveness. All of this is military shit. All of it. But coming back to what I was saying before, if you have hallucinations that are not caused by long-range acoustic devices, because long-range acoustic devices can throw sounds over to you from a relatively far distance. If it's not long-range acoustic devices throwing sound over to you, then the likelihood is that there are certain parts of your brain that have been deliberately fired upon in order to create auditory hallucinations, and thus any auditory hallucinations on your part, they don't disprove the gangstalking. You can get certain details wrong about your targeting, but it doesn't mean your targeting doesn't exist. The only thing that will prove whether or not your targeting exists is if you're scanned for frequencies, because if you're scanned for frequencies and there are certain emissions coming from your body, if there are certain frequencies coming from your body, it means that most likely you have been chipped. Now, there are people like me who have low frequencies because the chips in my body, they haven't been replaced, or their effectiveness isn't that great because I'm always warm. So the only thing that will prove or disprove gangstalking is for you to be scanned for frequencies on your body, or pinpointed frequencies being emitted from your body, because those frequencies are coming from chips that allow you to be properly detected by the weaponry that is being fired on you. Part of the reason why you're chipped is for tracking. That's the only thing that can prove or disprove gangstalking, is if you're scanned. That's it. And MRI scans and CT scans. Those are the only things that can prove or disprove gangstalking. Nothing else. Not the word of somebody else. Nothing. Not your illness symptoms. Nothing. Nothing. Not a goddamn thing except scans for frequencies, MRI scans and CT scans. There is not a goddamn thing else that can prove or disprove gangstalking. And certainly not the word of people who are ignorant about mental health in the first place, or who are going to lie on you. But yeah, seeing, dementia diagnoses and stuff, there are so many things that could easily be forced or synthesized, and it's just such a terrifying state of affairs. There are so many illnesses out there that can be manufactured through causing a certain amount of trauma to the bodies of God knows how many people. And what makes it worse is that increasingly, the torture that we are undergoing, the torture is increasingly reliant upon an AI algorithm. That just makes it worse. You feel me? It's just this whole thing is like a horror movie you never signed up for. And plus, I'm losing my teeth as well. Both sides. Losing my teeth. Because the thing is, I've been fired on both sides of my jaw. And it was only a matter of time before there was tooth loss. There are so many TIs who have lost their teeth. And at first, I was really distraught about it, because I used to be very pretty. Now, I'm not saying I was model pretty. I've never been model pretty, but I was very pretty when I was younger. And my smile is the last thing left behind of that beauty that I used to have. And what kind of worried me was that if I lost my teeth, I know that it would be a while before I was able to replace them, if I could replace them at all. And I was worried about what that would mean for my vanity, But the weird thing is that what stops me from feeling like shit about it is that it's not my fault. I've had a bad diet. Throughout my life, I've had a really bad diet. I've abused my body. I've had multiple overdoses in my life. I haven't been the best to my body. I've treated my body with continuous disrespect. I'm not saying that I'm blameless, okay? I'm not. But The reason why I don't feel as bad as I could do is because I know it's not really my fault, because the weapons have been fired on me, not even since I was in my 20s, but since I was a child, bro. There have been weapons fired at my jaw, fired at my teeth. I've been losing teeth since I was in fucking high school. I've been losing teeth because of the weaponry. And and when I think about it like that, I'm like, I'm surprised I didn't lose more of my teeth by this age. I've still got most of my teeth in my mouth. Even after everything that they did, I've still got most of my fucking teeth in my mouth. How? And that's what makes me realize, like, if it was my fault, I'd be like, I'd be, fuck. If it was entirely my fault, I would be distraught and despondent and just not want to I just wouldn't want to engage with the world. But knowing that I'm only partially responsible for what's happening to me and not fully responsible, it makes me feel better. It makes me feel like, sure, I might not get certain things back in my life, but I can take knowledge in the fact that I'm not to blame for everything. And that kind of gives me comfort, you know? And there are so many TIs who have lost teeth and shit. It's a tragedy. It really is a tragedy. But yeah, again, I haven't lived the best life. My diet is atrocious. It's really bad. It's only like in the last, like, what? Like 10 years or so that my diet is improved in any way whatsoever. But even then, I have moments of sliding back into fuckery when it comes to my diet. I have moments of sliding back into fuckery, but then when you're being fucking trafficked every day, I mean, come on. You need a little something, something, a little something, something. As long as it's not drugs, I'm good. As long as it's not drugs, I'm good. Although arguably sugar is drugs. But that's for another subject for another time. But yeah, so many illnesses. So many different ways to synthesize them. It's so terrifying. It's so bad. So fucking bad. But anyway, I'm going to leave links to the auditory stuff. I'm going to leave links to the auditory cortex on the side of the brain. I'm going to leave links for that. I'm going to leave the link for that video. Please watch the Carrie Bradshaw video and look up the symptoms. Many TIs, or many people who say they're victims of mind control programming, they're going to notice a lot of similarities between their own stories and what they're highlighting in Carrie's. They're going to notice a lot of similarities. Please watch that video. Okay? And yeah, that's all I got to say for now. So my fellow TIs, please stay blessed. I love you guys so much. Stay strong. You guys are incredible. My God, what you have to go through every day, you are stronger and more incredible than you know. Please believe that. Yeah. I forgot to talk about the infections in the body. Shall I talk about it now? Yeah, there's also the fact that constant attacks on the body, it causes infections in the body. And it doesn't matter where the body is attacked, it will cause infections there because the immune system is really putting up a fight. Do you know what I mean? Whew. But yeah, I love you guys so much. Peace and blessings. And you guys take care. You are so strong. Swear to God, the more I really begin to understand about how gangstalking works, the more I realize how strong so many of you are. You are incredible. Keep going. Keep doing your thing. And we're all here for you. Well, the rest of us TIs, we might not know you, but we're a community. We're a family. And we are one. And we see you. All right? Take care. Peace and blessings. Bye-bye.